Hey, welcome to Epilogue. Thanks for joining us. In this episode, I get to sit down with Dr. Mark Mayfield. I just call him Counselor Extraordinaire because the guy's amazing. He's part of our church, and we're going to dig deep into the topic of the need to pause and silence and solitude. We're going to talk about how all this relates to the loneliness epidemic in our world today. So I hope you enjoy this episode and that you get something practical out of it. Well, Mark, thanks for joining us again, man. It's been a minute, but always good to have you on Epilogue. So how you doing?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm not sure when this is going to air. We either have impending our snowstorm or after our snowstorm here in Houston.
It'll be before the snowstorm, alleged snowstorm. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
I've just been told to get a folding chair and sit on the corner of some intersection and watch people try to drive around here.
Yeah. That's really what happens. I mean, we don't, we also lose our minds when it snows. So
being from Colorado, it'll be fun.
Yeah, it's exciting. So you just sit on that corner and just watch us lose our minds.
Yeah, sounds good.
It's exciting. I remember when we lived in College Station. We were working in a church, and we were trying to. We typically followed the school calendar, like school closures and stuff. And so Heather and I woke up one morning. We're like, I wonder if church is open today, and because there was a freeze, and this is when you found that out by turning on the radio. So we turned on the radio, and the official report was literally, I kid you not, emergency officials saw ice forming on the leaves of trees this morning. So all schools are closed. And I was like, wow, that's how you know you live in Texas, man. So,
yes.
Anyway.
Living in the mountains of Colorado, I don't think we had a snow day ever.
Probably not. Yeah. Probably not. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. We get excited, though, man. There's a buzz.
Yes.
There's a buzz this week as we look at temperatures dropping next week. And crazy. Well, hey, we have been now 2 weeks into our pause series, and just talking about the need to pause and take action to fight the pressure of distraction. And so we looked at Mary and Martha and focusing on what's most important. And then this past week we talked about silence and solitude and the importance of that, and how Jesus modeled it. And so, man, I wanted to have you on this. Obviously, man, you are a counselor, you're a mental health expert. You write on this and speak on this. And so, man, I thought it'd be really great to have you in here to connect the dots on obviously the mental health crisis that we see right now.
Sure.
But connecting that to the need to pause and some of the issues we've been talking about. And so I guess first of all, like mental health crisis.
Yep.
Is this happening?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a lot of research, not competing research. I think it's complementary research, but I don't know if we'd call it a mental health crisis as much as it being a loneliness crisis.
Loneliness crisis.
Yeah. So Vivek Murthy, our Surgeon General, had a 2023 report on the effects of loneliness.
Yeah.
And so loneliness and isolation, create avenues for mental health issues.
Yeah.
Because we're not in community, we're separated from each other, we're, distracted with technology on our phones, all that kind of stuff. And it will, it makes way. It's a kind of a spiral. It makes way into anxiety, depression.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely opens the door to. I mean, you're just alone in your thoughts, and that's a scary place to be.
Well, it's an echo chamber, and anytime we live in an echo chamber and we don't have somebody going, "Hey, yes, this sucks right now," but you'll be okay, and I'm going to walk with you through that, and we're going to do this together. If you don't have that,
yes. So how do we? I mean, so loneliness crisis. People are more alone than ever before. What do we're talking about pausing. You're talking about silence and solitude, right? Getting alone. We talked about the eremos, this place of loneliness.
Yeah.
And so what do you, like, how do you reconcile that? If the mental, or if there's a loneliness crisis, we're encouraging people to pause by getting alone. So
so I think it all comes back to the foundation of this conversation. So all of us are going to experience bouts of being lonely.
Yeah.
right? And that's a feeling of disconnected. It's a feeling of not being seen, noticed, loved, valued. Um, but many of us are geared towards coming out of that because we have a relationship with God.
Mhm.
Others, we have a stronger sense of self. We know our emotions well enough and our feelings that we're able to do things about it. We've
Yeah.
got, those, but pervasive loneliness is, I think, where Satan can jump in and it begins to tell these lies that you're not worth it. You're not, there's hopelessness attached to it.
Yeah.
So I think I wonder, and haven't done this in preparation for this, but I wonder if we go into the Greek, um, that there's a difference between loneliness and isolation than there is solitude,
Yes, absolutely.
right? And so the
Yeah.
Greek, parsing the Greek out in that, and I think the English version of the Bible, is great, but doesn't give
Mhm.
us the depth. And so I think solitude is actually a spiritual discipline,
Yes.
where
Yeah.
loneliness and isolation are, I think, self-imposed, societal imposed,
Mhm.
but it has more to do with how we think about ourselves. Solitude is this desire to go, I want to know myself better.
Yeah.
I want to look inward. I want to ask the right questions, and I want to be
Yeah.
in front of the Most High God to
Mhm.
receive.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly that's where I was hoping you'd go, man. Because I mean, that's the key. I mean, even Sunday we talked about Jesus modeling it.
Hmm.
Jesus didn't stay in isolation,
Mm-mm.
right? It wasn't pervasive. Your word, pervasive isolation. It was this rhythm of retreating and then coming back. But you see, he's in community.
Yeah.
He's got the 12 following him around, even in his darkest moment in the garden of one of his darkest moments in the Garden of Gethsemane. Obviously, we see him in this pain and anxiety, but he's got them with him a stone's throw away. But he withdraws,
Hmm.
and then he comes back, and it's and so and you see him in ministry going along, and he withdraws to the place of loneliness, and then comes back, and
Hmm.
he's with the crowds, and he's with his disciples. He's fellowshipping with them, and so yeah, it's not silence and solitude is not a practice of pervasive isolation.
Mm-mm.
You know.
Well, and I think part of this, though, too, is recognizing, especially for those of us that have been Christians for a long time, is that what's the purpose of retreating to solitude?
Yeah.
It's to be closer to our Father.
Communion with the Father.
Yeah,
It's communion.
right.
It's yeah.
And it shouldn't be wasted in that we come back and we're still the same person,
Hmm.
or we're still the angry boss,
Yeah.
or the short tempered person, or there has to be, if we're coming back into fellowship with others, there's got to be this almost transformative piece of
Yeah.
stealing away in solitude.
Yes. Yes. And it in a sense it actually like the difference between loneliness and solitude is solitude prepares you for community.
Yes.
Solitude doesn't prepare you for pervasive
Mm-mm.
loneliness, right? Solitude is communion with the Father, just it being filled up, finding your worth and your value in
Hmm.
Him, and then moving back into community out of that place and
Right.
and serving others and so you don't empty out
Right.
um I was thinking about kind of the difference of these healthy rhythms of solitude compared to like and again, I'm not saying certain people might not be called certain people might be called to this, but probably not everybody. But like the monastic lifestyle
Hmm.
monks um pulling away, and they're going to be away from people for the rest of their lives,
Hmm.
and choosing that, and I don't really think that's like what we're all designed to do, right?
Some days that sounds really nice.
Some days that sounds really nice, and I'm not saying they don't have community
Sure. Right.
there, but it's like um, I think we're still made to
Yeah.
live in the world, just not of it,
Hmm.
and but these retreats to the eremos, into silence and solitude, prepare us to
Hmm.
to be in community, and
Hmm.
they prepare us for the work God has for us to do.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that's the difference between solitude and pervasive
Hmm.
loneliness. Pervasive loneliness is, I mean, people in pervasive loneliness, I'm imagining, aren't there for the purpose of connecting with God to be refilled and move back out, right?
I think sometimes many people don't understand how they've gotten there. So when I'm
Yeah.
working with clients in my counseling practice or in my coaching ministry,
Mhm.
the we have to backtrace kind of what are the breadcrumbs that show us how we got here so we can get out.
Yeah.
And it's just like those of us that wrestle with anxiety. If we're not paying attention to our levels of concern and worry or our fear meter,
Mhm.
we're going to end up in this pit of anxiety, and we're like, how did we get
Yeah,
here?
before you know it.
Before
Yeah.
you know it. And so
Yeah.
it's the same kind of thing, I think.
Yeah.
And I think one of the practices I do with my patients is helping them integrate solitude
Mm,
into their healing practices of loneliness.
good.
So
Yeah.
it's
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
it can be a tool.
That's really good. I mean, it's like, hey, in your loneliness, go to the lonely place. That's the
Hmm.
irony there, but
Hmm.
but do it for this purpose,
Right.
right? It's purposeful
Yeah.
loneliness. Yeah. That's great. So you mentioned it earlier, and it's come up the last 2 weeks in our pod series is um, the distractions of our devices
Hmm.
and how, I talked about it Sunday, how, silence and solitude, the purpose is to get away from the crowds, get away from the noises. But when we take these with us, we're taking the crowded noise with us.
Sure.
Um, and there's an irony there because these make us more connected than ever before, our devices. Yet we're more we're in a
Yeah.
loneliness epidemic. And
Right.
so, talk about the relationship of the loneliness, pervasive loneliness epidemic, and our devices. Like,
I think we need to figure out a different word. We're most connected. I wonder if there's a different word we can use.
right.
Most wired in or whatever.
Yeah, artificially connected. I don't know.
Artificially
What do you?
connected. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm getting a chance to go speak at Cornerstone University in Michigan in March, and one of the panelists that will be with me is Dr. Jean Twenge,
Mm.
who wrote the book iGen.
Yeah.
And I love her research. She's out of San Diego State. But it's just
fantastic.
talking about the fact that the physiological effects of being on a screen far outweigh the benefits. So I'm not, again, I know you've said this, Russell said this, I'm not anti-device.
No.
I
mean,
think
I've got mine right in front of me right now.
it's a tool, but it's our bodies can only handle certain amounts. And I think research is saying, and Twenge talks about this in her book, about 45 minutes to 75 minutes at a time, right, in a sitting is all our body can handle. And then we need a break.
Yeah. But the statistics are showing we're on them far more than
Far
that.
more. And it was interesting reading your guys' statistics on Sunday, last 2 Sundays. I've seen even upwards of 10 to 12 hours, of some studies, have said that our kids are spending on devices. So I'm like, how many hours are we awake during the day? What does this look like? But what it does is we have a part of our brain, most of our brain, that is connecting to others. So face to face, emotional reciprocity, body language, intelligence, and that kind of stuff is only it's a use it or lose it.
Yeah,
it's a use it or lose it principle. And so the more that we engage others face to face in proximity, watching their body language or responses. If I yell at you, you're going to react a certain way, and I should probably pick up on that, so I stop yelling at you. Those kinds of things dwindle. And so now we're behind these screens, and then we don't know how to have a conversation.
Yeah.
We don't know how to have an argument. We don't know how to have, and we lose that piece of it. And so the temptation is, I'm more connected with my followers and my people and that kind of stuff, but I can't sit across the dinner table and look up and have a conversation.
Yeah.
So that's what produces that.
It pushes us into continued isolation.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's we're wired, we're designed for relationship. You and I,
100%.
I mean, we have ears, we have eyes, and we have a mouth, right? Like, so I'm seeing body language, I'm hearing your speech, and I'm speaking back. And and when we're not putting those things into practice, and we're staring at a screen where we're controlling what we hear, and we're not speaking, we're typing, and it drives us into isolation.
Well, let's talk about the algorithms.
Yeah.
On our devices too. The more we watch certain things or search certain things, those are the things that are going to come up. So now we live in an echo chamber.
Yeah, that's
right?
a good point. Yeah.
And so we're, think about the political situation this last year. If we're only looking at Republican stuff, all we're going to get is Republican stuff. And we might have a neighbor that's Democrat, but we don't have any talking points to sit with them and be in relationship with them, or a family member at Thanksgiving.
No idea.
We have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea how to bridge the gap, because it's actually manipulating our searches, and it's feeding us what we want. So it's that echo chamber piece.
Yeah. Which again leads to that pervasive isolation.
Right. So Stanford researcher Dr. Elias, long last name that I don't remember how to say, but he said this, that the more that we are comfortable with tweets and sound bites, the less likely we're able to sit with more complex conversations. And he goes, I'm afraid that if we don't use it, we're going to lose it.
Wow. Yeah. You think is there any hope? Is there any, I mean, like, is there light at the end of the tunnel? Are we
Yes.
getting better or are we getting worse? What do you
Well,
think?
it goes back to the discipline of solitude,
Yeah.
right? So if solitude was easy, we'd all be doing it on a daily basis or a
Mhm.
rhythm type of thing. It's a discipline, just like discipline of prayer, Bible reading, scripture memory. They're disciplines. Um, I think this is a discipline, and so I often ask families, "What is your culture of tech at your house?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "What do you mean by what is my culture of tech?" I'm like, "Well, is it just free for all?
Yeah.
Is phones in the room at night? Does everybody have a TV? Does everybody have a
Mhm.
computer and iPad? Do you have any sitting around the dinner table? Like, what is your culture of tech? Everybody's going to be different."
Mhm.
Um, and so Sarah and I just tried something over Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
and we did a what we called '90s week. And
Yeah.
so,
You
w-
shared this with me
yeah,
before, and I love that you did
it
this.
was
It's
fun.
really cool.
So
You tell us what you did.
our
Yeah.
phones were anchored at a place in our kitchen,
Yeah.
and we turned them up so if that rang or dinged, we could come and check it. Um, no iPad devices
Mhm.
or computers except in the office for work and that kind of stuff. And then we can only watch. Remember the live TV?
Yep.
We can only watch live
Yeah.
TV. No,
What is that like? I don't even know how to access
I know.
live TV anymore.
Live TV, no streaming, no
Yeah.
recording, that kind of stuff. And so we were outside more. We were playing remote control cars and our
Mhm.
frisbees and baseball and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And our kids got along better,
Yeah.
less arguing.
Wow.
And so we've maintained aspects of it. Um, but there's, you know, I think it wouldn't hurt for us to think about that.
Mm.
Think about, where do we put our phones? What is the first thing we look at in the morning when we get up?
Mhm.
Do we have an alarm clock? Like, remember the old fashioned alarm clocks that you
Yeah.
could throw across the
Yep.
room? Um,
Yeah.
but then are we putting limits on the Wi-Fi? Is it being turned off at night so we don't have that radiation stuff going
Mhm.
on?
Mhm.
There's Faraday bags you can put over your phones and devices and that kind of stuff that help
Yeah.
decrease the Wi-Fi radiation. But there's total health components to all this.
Yeah.
So another thing that we do, so I teach at Colorado Christian University in their master's program in counseling, and we have a spiritual formation and counseling class. That's one of the first classes that our students have to take. And the culmination assignment is a 3-hour silent retreat,
Hmm.
like completely.
Like, I mean, do people die on these things or like, I
Well,
mean, it's
well, they
No,
act
I'm
like
just-
well, no, seriously, like that's fun. They act like they're going to because I can't tell you how many emails and phone calls I get. Are you sure? 3 hours of silence and I can't do it at home. No, you can't do it at home. You have to get it approved. Where are you
Yeah.
going to do it? What? I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do.
What do I do?
What- yeah, it's hilarious. Some of the excuses that come up, and I'm like, no, like if you want to pass this class, you got to do it. And they have to do a video um, reflection as their assignment, not a
Hmm.
paper, but just when they're done, it's ironic. You turn on
Yeah,
your device
yeah, I would
afterwards, but
I'm thinking that as you're saying
yeah,
that. It's
but a video reflection
yeah.
of their time. I can't tell you how many times people have been crying they couldn't get through
Mm.
it. I met God in a way that I hadn't met before.
Yeah.
Like I was really really anxious at first because I couldn't turn my thoughts off, and then I
Mhm.
started praying, and just the benefit of it. And
Yeah.
so it's like, how do we? Maybe not realistic to do a 3-hour silent retreat every week,
Mm.
but what are our rhythms of quarterly,
Yeah.
biannually? You know, there's some great places around here in the wintertime that you can get away up.
Yeah.
Get away. There's a place up in Tyler that's got cottages you can rent. There's
Mhm.
camps. You
Yeah,
know,
there's even, I mean, places like, monasteries and stuff like that where
come, yeah,
super, super, yeah, convents and stuff where
hmm
super cheap. You can
hmm
go and they'll give you a room and sometimes a meal and
yeah.
so places like that where you can go and just, and it's silent. It's meant for a silent retreat.
But here's the thing, and I don't know if you guys are getting to this in the next couple of Sundays, but the thing is, I think people don't do it because they're afraid of what they might
Mhm.
be confronted with.
Sure, we touched on it this past Sunday, but you're faced with your remember like Luke Skywalker, you're faced with your deepest fears and
Yeah.
your um, anxieties, and all.
hmm
Like you said, when you're alone in your thoughts, it can be an echo chamber, and if we're not used to being alone in our thoughts, like it can be
hmm
terrifying, and we don't know what to do with it. I mean,
Well, that's why I loved what you talked about on Sunday too, is that you sometimes have just turned off the radio
mhm.
in your car,
Yeah,
and I used to travel quite a bit throughout Houston doing consulting and stuff, and I would just purposely turn off the radio
mhm.
and just be in silence. At first, it was really weird.
Yeah.
After a while, I'm like, I prefer it.
Actually, I've enjoyed it.
hmm
There've been some moments where kind of my reflex is like, oh, I grab my phone and just by like reflexively plug it in, and then I'm
Mhm.
like, no,
Mhm.
like I actually want to drive in silence, like
Well, and
um,
I always challenge parents, if you have an iPhone, you get a screen report,
hmm yeah,
and so the goal is to, like, decrease that every week,
hmm
you know?
yeah. Yeah, and I don't. I mean, I think we'd be surprised if we look at our phone. I'm always surprised when I look at my, even if I think I'm doing
Like,
well.
"I'm doing great. 5 hours a
Yeah,
day?
and I
What
look and
the
I'm like,
world?"
whoa, where did
Yeah.
that go? And I'll like look through and I go, oh yeah, okay, there,
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, it's startling when we look at it, and I think, I mean, honestly, I think if there's no other takeaway from this talk that people walk away with, like establishing a culture of tech
Mhm.
in your home
Mhm.
is really good, like of guidelines around it is really healthy. And that's if you live alone. That's if you're married, and if you have a family. Like
Mhm.
establish that culture, because what guidelines and boundaries and guardrails do you have personally in your marriage and then in your family? Like it's
Well, I will challenge you too, um, for those of us that are you made this comment up
mhm,
on stage that are not tech natives.
mhm.
We're,
Digital natives. Yeah,
digital
yeah,
natives, we're digital immigrants
yeah,
in a lot of ways because, those of us that are in our mid 40s, we can close our eyes and spend take a little bit of time to get
yeah.
back there, but we can remember what it
I-
was like when we got our first computer and
yes,
when, the dial up craze happened. But before that, I can remember vividly
yeah,
being a 13, 14, 15-year-old, like, what do I do? Like, at the end, my show's not on TV.
yeah,
I'm,
yeah. I have to
I
wait
have to wait.
till next Saturday.
I'm gonna go play Legos. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
outside. I'm going to be with my friends.
Mhm.
I'm going to have a game night with my family. Like,
Different world. Yep.
why can't we get back to that
Yeah.
in some degree?
Yeah.
It's a choice.
Yeah. I mean, it's trade-off. Like I'm glad I don't have to call the movie theater
To find
and
out.
and and,
Yeah, exactly.
and listen for them to I just remember calling the movie theater and they're listing the times for each day, and then it's like somebody says something, you're like, "Oh no, I
I
missed
missed
it." And
it.
I got to call back and
Or if your TV guide didn't show up in the mail that week,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
couldn't don't know what's coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for conveniences, but you're right. Like I remember a day when it was it's just a different world. And yeah, when I was bored, I didn't reflexively
Mm-mm.
reach for my phone,
Mm-mm.
which is what we do now. 77%. It's a Microsoft research statistic.
Mm-hmm.
77% of us, when we're bored, we reflexively reach for our device.
And if you want to get mad for a second,
Mhm.
that has been um, done on purpose.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it's designed to lure us.
It's
Yeah.
designed to lure us.
Yeah.
It's the grandest marketing
Mhm.
scheme in the world.
It's addictive. I mean, like that's the only explanation for mindless scrolling that we do. I mean, like when you, I mean, some of us can't do a 3 hour retreat like that because we don't know what to do if we can't do
Well,
this with our thumb and
n-
scroll up and
and
down.
this might be another conversation for a different time,
Yeah.
but it points to the effect that we are uh, emotionally inept as a society. We
Mm,
can't sit with the uncomfortable, and we
yeah.
can't sit with the uncomfortable because we don't want to wrestle with the uncomfortable and figure out what's going on inside of us so that
Yeah.
we can change. We'd just rather numb it out and
Numb
just
it.
keep on going
Yep.
with our whatever.
Yep. Yeah. Again, which goes back to the need for solitude to
Yes.
slip away personally and
Yes.
face the things that are
Right.
uncomfortable. And
Exactly.
it's like go to your Garden of Gethsemane and pour out your heart and pain
Hmm.
to the Lord, right?
Hmm.
But we are so uncomfortable doing that, so we numb it and numb it and numb it and keep scrolling and hope it'll just go away,
Right.
or we medicate and nothing wrong with medication, but you know what I mean. Like we do everything but.
Yeah. Medicate using use the general term
Yeah.
TV,
Yes,
phone,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
food,
Mhm. Yeah,
distractions. Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, man, great having you here, man. Great
Yeah.
conversation, and I hope somebody takes something away from this and maybe considers establishing that culture of
Mhm.
tech. I mean, I know, like, as a family, like, we're a lot like you. We talk a lot, but, yeah, man, tech is not a pervasive part of our, like, as my notification goes off, right? But it's not a pervasive part of our family life. I mean, this
Mhm.
is, so we don't check it at the dinner table. If
Mhm.
we're sitting down to do something, like play a game, we're not all on our phones and we don't multitask with devices. If we're
Right.
watching a movie, we're not sitting there on our devices. I mean, stuff like that. That's just um,
Well, I'll just say this for people that are listening: if you want to do that, it takes one step, but it
mhm.
takes give it 30 days, give it
Yes,
60 days,
yeah,
give yourself some leeway to make some mistakes, to try it
yeah,
again. But it's not going to just be this end all be all fix all right away. It's going to
right.
take some time,
Yeah, and
and
a lot of people give up because you go a week and you go, man, this just isn't practical, and
it's
then
going to be
it's
hard for a while.
yeah, 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 and I think that's where it's like, we'll push through that, make some adjustments as needed,
Hmm.
and figure out what works for your
Yeah.
family, and
Well, I just
um,
appreciate you guys here tackling these topics because I think it's super important to be practical with our our families at this church and
yeah.
giving them practical resources. So it's a great conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one that, man, I just, I think back to when I first started using a device and going, man, I like, yeah, I wish I had that kind of guidance.
Hmm.
And, it's, yeah, anyway. Well, Mark, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
helping us.
Yep.
Cause I mean, you're helping us, even add new language to this. And
Yeah.
so really appreciate you joining us. And yeah, always awesome to have you on Epilogue,
I
man. So
appreciate it. Thank
yeah,
you.
thanks, Mark.